Right now, something unusual is happening behind the scenes of the global economy. Governments around the world are quietly preparing for something, but they are not announcing it publicly. They are not holding press conferences or warning citizens about it. Instead, they are doing something far more subtle. They are buying and storing the three most important resources that societies depend on: food, energy, and gold. Across multiple continents, countries are expanding strategic reserves, securing long-term supply agreements, and increasing their holdings of physical assets that historically protect nations during times of crisis. At first glance, these actions might seem unrelated, but when you connect the dots, they begin to reveal a pattern that is difficult to ignore. Because throughout history, governments usually begin stockpiling critical resources only when they believe the future may become more unstable. To understand why this is happening, we need to look at how the global system has changed over the past decade. For more than 30 years, globalization created an economic model built on efficiency. Countries specialized in producing certain goods and relied heavily on international trade to obtain everything else. Food might be grown in one region, energy produced in another, manufacturing concentrated in completely different parts of the world. The system worked because shipping routes were stable, trade relationships were predictable, and conflicts between major powers were relatively contained. But over the last few years, that stability has started to erode. The first major warning came during the COVID-19 pandemic. Factories shut down, ports became congested, cargo ships waited weeks to unload. Shortages appeared in everything from medical equipment to basic consumer goods. Even advanced economies suddenly realized how fragile global supply chains had become. A single disruption in one part of the world could ripple across entire industries thousands of miles away, and that realization fundamentally changed how governments think about economic security. Instead of relying entirely on global markets, many countries began asking a different question. What happens if the system stops working? What happens if trade routes close? What happens if geopolitical conflicts interrupt the flow of resources that economies depend on? One of the biggest concerns involves energy. Oil and gas remain the backbone of modern industrial societies. They power transportation networks, electricity generation, and manufacturing industries that produce everything from plastics to fertilizers. But energy supply is heavily concentrated in certain regions of the world. Large portions of global oil exports pass through narrow maritime choke points such as the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea. These routes carry enormous volumes of energy every single day. If a conflict or military escalation disrupts these passages, the effects can spread rapidly through the global economy. Oil prices can spike within days, transportation costs rise, and inflation spreads through food, goods, and services. This is why many governments maintain strategic petroleum reserves. These reserves act like emergency fuel supplies that can stabilize domestic markets if global shipments are disrupted. But in recent years, several countries have begun expanding these reserves more aggressively than before. At the same time, another trend has been unfolding in the global food system. Food security has become a growing concern for governments. Extreme weather events, droughts, and geopolitical tensions have repeatedly disrupted agricultural production and exports. When conflicts occur between major food-producing nations, the effects can be felt around the world. During the early months of the Russia-Ukraine war, wheat prices surged dramatically because both countries are major suppliers to global markets. Several nations that depended heavily on imported grain suddenly faced serious supply risks. Since then, governments in multiple regions have started increasing national grain reserves and investing more heavily in domestic agricultural production, because when food supply becomes uncertain, political and economic stability can quickly follow. But perhaps the most interesting signal is happening in the financial world. Central banks around the globe have been buying gold at record levels. In recent years, countries including China, India, Turkey, and several Middle Eastern nations have significantly increased their gold holdings. Gold has historically served as a financial safeguard during times of global uncertainty. Unlike paper currencies, gold cannot be printed by governments. It has no counterparty risk, and it is recognized worldwide as a store of value. When central banks begin accumulating gold at unusually high rates, it often suggests concerns about the stability of the global financial system. Some analysts believe this trend reflects deeper changes in the structure of global power. For decades, the US dollar has dominated international trade and financial transactions. But rising geopolitical tensions, sanctions, and trade rivalries are encouraging some countries to reduce their exposure to dollar-based systems. Gold offers a way to diversify reserves while maintaining a universally trusted asset. And when you combine these three developments together, energy reserves, food stockpiles, and rising gold purchases, a broader picture begins to emerge. Governments appear to be preparing for a world where stability cannot be taken for granted. A world where supply chains may become shorter, trade relationships more strategic, and economic alliances more important than ever before. This does not necessarily mean a crisis is imminent, but history shows that governments often begin preparing long before major disruptions occur. During the Cold War, many nations maintained massive strategic reserves of essential resources. They understood that economic resilience was just as important as military strength. Today, the challenges facing the global system are different, but the logic of preparation remains the same. Geopolitical competition between major powers is intensifying. Trade relationships are becoming more complex, and the global economy is adjusting to new political and technological realities. In such an environment, governments cannot afford to rely entirely on fragile international systems. Instead, they are building buffers against uncertainty. Strategic stockpiles, domestic production capacity, and diversified financial reserves. These measures may seem quiet and unremarkable to the public, but together they represent a significant shift in how nations are thinking about security in the modern world. Because when the next major global disruption occurs, whether it is economic, geopolitical, or environmental, the countries that prepared early will be in the strongest position. And that is why, behind closed doors, governments across the world are quietly accumulating the resources that matter most: food, energy, and gold.